This is a good problem to have if you're BYU. It means your program is successful. It means fans want to go to games. It means you don't have to drop curtains, right, to make it look like your stadium is small enough to accommodate your lack of attendance. Hello and welcome to the Loyal Cougars podcast. I'm your host, Jake Edmonds, alongside Tosh Mackintosh. Tosh, we are just 2 days. We're recording on a Monday. We're 2 days away from fall camp.
Crazy. It's awesome. I love it. Summer's almost over. Fall is awesome, and it's almost here.
I actually thought we were going to have a hard time talking about things during the offseason. Jake Retzloff obviously was a big part of that. But I'm surprised. This is our first kind of offseason doing this podcast, and I'm surprised at how much we've had to be able to talk about. But I'm super excited to start talking about actual games and actual scenarios and situations that BYU is facing. You know, starting with, and we'll kind of on the tail end of this Jake Retzloff series and saga that's now coming to an end. Now, what does BYU do in fall camp, specifically with the quarterback situation? And that's going to be the storyline, I think, as we come into fall camp. Who is going to be the starting quarterback? Is it going to be McKay Hillstead? Is it going to be Bear Bachmeyer? Is it going to be Trayson Bourget? I actually was on Tosh. I was on KU TV talking sports. I think it was their KMYU show. On Friday or Saturday. If it was Saturday, it actually would have been KU TV. And me and Adam Mikulich, my old friend, talked about this situation. And, he asked the question, how big of a shock is this to BYU fans? Not necessarily that Jake left, but the fact that he left as late as he did. And now BYU only has 2 weeks, or whatever fall camp allows them, 4 weeks to pick a starting quarterback for Portland State.
Yeah, my thoughts are, soon as the Jake Retzloff thing was announced, though, the accusations, I would say about 80% of fans I saw said, oh, he's gone. I was actually more in the 20% of the, hey, this isn't the honor code of 10 years ago. This is a new world. But, and I think both turned out to be true. It wasn't a mandatory 1-year suspension, but in the end, it made sense for him to leave. And so, but I'm not that surprised, but it does put us in a real weird situation where the most important player on the position-wise, the most important position on the field is a total wide open race right now with a lot of unknowns.
Yeah, and honestly, it's the biggest question mark. It's wild that we went from the biggest certainty of the offseason, which was Jake Retzloff is going to start next season, to now it's the biggest question mark. And it's such a pivotal piece to the season because really everything else is in place, right? I think we already kind of have an idea of how good every other position group is going to be, especially on the offense, wide receiver, running back, they're set. The offensive line is pretty solid. And so the success of this offense hinges on who is it playing quarterback, right? Who's going to start at quarterback and how good are they? And, those BYU fans that were almost mocking Utah last year for having a poor quarterback situation, very similar to what BYU is facing today. The only difference being that, Cam Rising was injured 3 or 4 games into the season. And so that comes at more of a shock, I think, to Utah fans, where you have to get your true freshman quarterback ready the next week to play against Big 12 competition. And obviously Isaac Wilson wasn't ready for that. The question now is, with Jake Retzloff out, BYU has more time to get their quarterback ready to at least, be ready for the starting role. But is McKay Hillstead going to lay an egg like Isaac Wilson?
We'll find out. The only thing that would make it up to Utah's circus level, though, would be if Kalani every week was floating out there, hey, Jake Retzloff might come back this week. That was part of the madness for the players and the fans, is that Kyle every week was acting for 2 years, was acting like their guy was coming back that week.
Sure, and that added to the level of frustration for Utah fans. I mean, I sit next to one at work. He was like, "Oh, I think he's going to come back this week," and I'm like, "I'm hearing he's not going to be back for 3 or 4 weeks." Who knows what's going to happen? And to your point, yes, I think you're not going to have this kind of animosity from BYU fans to Kalani because that doesn't exist. That kind of uncertainty. But what does exist is the fact that there's a huge unknown at quarterback. And there was a lot of hype around Isaac Wilson being ready to go for Utah, that like if Cam Rising were to get hurt, Isaac would be like the next guy. And he was kind of this prodigy coming in, and he would perform as well as Zach Wilson did. Like that was kind of the expectation. And when he came in and laid a massive egg, and that's not to say he's going to be a bad quarterback. Like he may still turn out to be a good quarterback, but you throw a true freshman in to Big 12 play when he's not ready, he's not fully developed, you're going to have that result.
I think that it's actually more of a check on fans on Bear Bachmeier.
Sure.
Because, you know, Isaac was a 4-star guy that lit up everybody in high school. Like in high school, he was just looked like the very real deal, got recruited from all over the place, came in. But it's just a big step up from high school football to D1 football at this level. And so, if anything, I from my pulse of talking to fans, I feel like Bear is probably the one that I hear the most that people say they want. But you got to be careful to not take that cake out before it's cooked. And I'm not sure that Bear Bachmeier is going to be ready for big-time football as a true freshman in the first month of the season.
Yeah. And we've talked about this, and I think I've made the case for Bear. I think I'm in the camp of let's start Bear against Portland State because you're not going to lose that game anyway. But to your point, like, yeah, I mean, we may end up with the same situation we did with Isaac Wilson at Utah. He may not be ready, and especially because he didn't play in the spring. And so here's why I think Bear would get a consideration. Bear's chance to play truly for this BYU team was going to be next year, right? And maybe a couple years down the road as well, depending on how Ryder Lyons did coming in. You don't want to necessarily bench Ryder Lyons if he's ready to go post-mission. Now, is he going to be ready to go? We'll have to decide that at that time. But Bear's kind of window is pretty small. And if you can get him ready early and get him ready for that small window, then you may see a breakout quarterback next year. And yeah, you may sacrifice a couple of games. You may sacrifice his performance this year in throwing him to the wolves early on. But if you may not. He may be a standout quarterback this year as a true freshman. And if he is, then you've got an All-American, you've got an All-Conference quarterback as a sophomore next year. And when Ryder comes in, then you really have a true quarterback battle, and you still may anyway, but then you've got a real true quarterback battle where you got a Bear Bachmeier who has a year and a half, maybe 2 years of experience under his belt against a 4-star, 5-star quarterback coming in off his mission. I like that situation better next year. Now, for sure, if you're looking at just this year, who gives this team the best chance to win as many games as possible? I don't know if Bear is that guy. And we'll know, I think, more in the fall. We'll see who's actually performing better. We'll see if Bear can actually pick up the offense. But I do think McKay Hillstead is probably that guy, and Trayson Bourget is number 2.
Yeah. The only thing I will say that helps Bear is that he's huge, and he's not afraid of the physicality of running the ball, and he looks like he's ready for that. Where, if you stood him next to Isaac Wilson, he's much, much bigger. And what does translate fairly well when you're moving up levels is the quarterback's ability to run. And so, that would be the thing that could make it so that it's an easier transition. But it's going to be fun. The next month's going to be fun. Every fan is going to be reading over Cougar Board and X, trying to find what's the information from fall camp. But even then, you're going to have to reach out to your friends that are close to the program to find out anything, because they're going to be very tactical. They're not going to release anything. Everybody does it. They want to go into probably not even the first game, but actually into the second game against Stanford, where Stanford's not sure who's going to be getting all the snaps at quarterback. Is my guess how it plays out.
Yeah. By the way, you have the trump card in terms of friends that are close to the athletic program. So don't ask me to ask my friends. I'm asking you to ask your friends.
Sounds like a plan.
So the reason we're kind of bringing this up is because Pro Football Focus, PFF, came out with their BYU preview, and I actually thought it was pretty well thought out. Like, they know what they're talking about in terms of personnel, in terms of kind of the situation of the team. I didn't necessarily agree with their win total. They went under 6.5, and we'll talk about that. But they did talk about the quarterback situation, and they specifically called out a lot of times that there's only a couple months to figure this out, who was going to be the quarterback. So they brought up the three quarterbacks, McKay Hillstead, Trayson Bourget, and Bear Bachmeier. They actually compared McKay Hillstead to Maddox Madsen. And I thought, there are so many quarterbacks in this country that you could compare another quarterback to, and you went with another guy from northern Utah County.
Yeah, pretty awesome. It's actually not that bad of a comp.
No, it's not. They're the same size, both 5'10". I think McKay's a little bit lighter, about 10 pounds lighter. But Maddox Madsen's right-handed, McKay Hillstead's left-handed. But in terms of skill set, I think they are very similar. I think Maddox is a decent thrower. He also can run the ball. Plays at Boise State right now. For those that don't know, he played at American Fork. By the way, McKay Hillstead and Maddox Madsen, both for American Fork and for Skyridge, were phenomenal quarterbacks for their teams. I think both of them won state championships, if not made it to the state championship. Like, both were really good. And so that's not a bad comp. I just think it's hilarious that, like, these guys, and maybe they might not even know that Maddox Madsen is from American Fork. I'm sure they probably do, but the fact that they go with another guy that's like 5 minutes down the road to put a comp out for McKay Hillstead, I think is hilarious. But I think it's a fair assessment. I do think that McKay will be limited by his size, and I don't know how good of arm strength he has. I don't think it's that great. I don't think Maddox Madsen's arm strength was that great, but I think they're both great decision makers.
Yeah, and what I gather from McKay, and that I haven't seen enough, but he can throw the deep ball well, but that's actually not the whole story on arm strength. You can have like a 70 percentile arm and be able to throw the deep ball well. Where arm strength really separates when the Brett Favres of the world that were in the 99 percentile is their ability just to gun it on the mid-range passes into small windows.
Yes.
And so I do think that McKay Hillstead will actually throw a better deep ball than Jake Retzlaff could. But what we don't know yet is his ability to throw the mid-range game into small windows. I just haven't seen enough, and I don't think he showed enough at Utah State to know on that.
Yeah, when I think of arm strength, I think of like John Beck, the guy that can not only mid-range across the middle, but mid-range to the sidelines too. John Beck was phenomenal. He was accurate, incredibly accurate, but he could also put the ball into tight windows in positions where, a quarterback without that arm strength would be throwing a pick six. These kind of quick outs or deep outs. So John Beck was phenomenal at that. I don't know. I'm in the same camp. I think McKay Hillstead, I haven't seen a lot of him at BYU. I think, he like I said, he was great at Skyridge. But I don't know. I haven't seen enough of his arm strength to really say, like, yeah, I feel comfortable with him being able to put it into those tight windows. I do think he can throw a great deep ball, but to your point, it's a lot of quarterbacks can throw the deep ball. They just kind of rear back and they just launch it. But can you get into that tight window with a quick release, with two defenders on a guy? That's what still kind of remains to be seen. But PFF did pick McKay Hillstead as kind of the favorite to win the starting job at BYU.
So the other thing that surprised me with PFF is, so PFF says, hey, BYU's defense is good. LJ Martin's good. They should be able to run the ball well. Oh, but by the way, we're picking them on the under on 6.5. And it's like, how does that all add up? And to me, the only way I make sense of it, and that I will be watching in fall camp, I think there's three things of question, and they're all important. Quarterback's the one that we've talked about ad nauseum, and we will continue to do so because we all know it's so important. The other two question marks are our corners. We lost both of our starting cornerbacks from last year, and then our edge rushers. Like, those are the other two question marks, corners and edge rushers, that we're going to have to really be watching in fall camp, because those would both have to fall on their face, I feel like, for us to be under 6.5. Like, I think we're going to go 4-0 in the first 4 games, as we've talked about. I think 3-1 in the first 4 games is actually almost the basement. The wheels would have to fall off in order for us to go below 3-1 in the first 4. So it's like, how do we not find another 3 or 4 wins out of all the rest of the games? I just have a hard time figuring out what PFF is talking about.
Yeah, I agree. They talk about all these reasons why BYU is so good. They talked about LJ Martin. They talked about Isaiah Glasker. They actually compared Isaiah Glasker to Jihad Campbell out of Alabama, who was picked 31st overall by the Eagles. Like, this guy's an NFL guy. They have they call out the 3rd easiest schedule in the conference. And so all of those things culminating, they still say BYU is going to go under 6.5. And I just don't see 6 losses. Like, the thing is, like, if BYU maybe had an SEC schedule, or maybe they had Arizona State and, I don't even think they have Kansas State. Do they have Kansas State on their schedule? If they had teams that were like in the top of the Big 12 on their schedule, I could see that. But they've got like Utah and Iowa State, and those are like the 2 toughest games I think on their schedule. And we'll talk about Iowa State in a little bit, but I don't see 6 losses on their schedule. And to your point, like 4 wins are pretty much automatic. And I would even say, like, up until Utah, they should be going undefeated. I think Utah's game 6. So you've got 5 wins to start the season, 5 games to start the season that should be wins. So yeah. I don't think 6.5. If I was a betting man, I would actually pick that as a lock to go over 6.5. The only reason that people are going under is because of Jake. And I don't think that one player can affect a season win total by more than 1.5, maybe 2 games, in my opinion.
If we can run the ball, our offense is going to be just fine. You can trot out a mid-level quarterback and have a great offense if you can run the ball.
And Utah has shown if you can stop the run, then you can win a lot of games regardless of who's at quarterback or who is your offensive coordinator. Regardless of how poor or good your offense is, Utah won games last year because of their defense despite their offense. And they've done that multiple years, right? Like, that's like their MO is our offense can struggle. Like, granted, their offense doesn't always struggle, but their offense has struggled in the past, and their defense has won them games. You bring in Isaiah Glasker, Keanu Tandavasa. You bring in their defensive line and their linebackers that they're bringing back. Their rush defense is probably going to be best in the conference. And that's going to win them a lot of games regardless of who's at quarterback.
The other thing that I think might be giving people pause is our offensive line. BYU fans are very confident just because we saw what we did last year. We love our O-line coach. He's been a wizard. But we have a lot of guys that have not started many games at BYU. But we have confidence in them because Jada, I believe his name is, who played incredibly against Colorado, but I think he only had 1 or 2 starts. So on a spreadsheet, that doesn't look very great. We have Gentry coming in at a very important position. BYU fans are hyped on him because we remember him getting recruited. He was a 5-star guy. He did start at Michigan, but again, on a spreadsheet, if you look at how many games he started, and he's brand new to this system, that's a reasonable spreadsheet concern. But I am like BYU fans. I'm like, I really think our offensive line is going to be pretty dang good.
I agree. So we'll kind of keep an eye on this through fall camp. I'm super excited that it's starting this week. We're going to start talking about news coming out of fall camp. This episode is brought to you by Aptiv. Aptiv believes that every home should be enjoyed. They tailor their pest control treatment plans to target pests when and where they're most active. Plus, if you see pest activity between treatments, Aptiv will return to take care of the problem at no additional cost. It's their way of making sure every customer is satisfied and every pest is controlled. If pests stay away, Aptiv is why. Visit AptivPestControl.com/loyalcougars or call 844-966-4787. Mention this promotion to get your initial treatment for just $29. That's AptivPestControl.com/loyalcougars or call 844-966-4787. Terms and conditions apply. Get home field advantage with Aptiv. Looking to get your brand in front of BYU's most engaged fans? The Loyal Cougars podcast and Cougar Board are your perfect match. Cougar Board is the largest online community of BYU fans with thousands of posts every day. The Loyal Cougars podcast is the official podcast of Cougar Board, and we have sponsorship opportunities available for both the podcast and the site. Contact us at sponsorships@loyalcougars.com, and we'll help your message hit home with the Cougar faithful. Again, that's sponsorships@loyalcougars.com. Moving on to basketball, because there was a little bit of drama this week, Tosh, and I think you're probably involved a little bit in this. You're a Cougar Club member, right?
I am, yeah. I am right in the heart of this. I'll tell my story. You set the stage. I'll tell my story.
Okay, so setting the stage, and if you're on social media, if you're on Cougar Board, this has been the conversation of the week, which is BYU's running out of season tickets, and they ran out of season tickets quickly, and people that are donating a lot of money to get season tickets at a decent level in the stadium are not getting the seats that they want. And so just to kind of set the stage, there are, just for Cougar Club membership breakdown, there's 109 members in the AD circle. There's 65 in Legacy 6, 146 Legacy 5, 252 Legacy 4, and it goes down from there. And what BYU is doing, and this is really the first time they've had to kind of deal with this situation, which is the team is really good and fans want to now go to games. How are we going to manage this? And so they're giving AD Circle members 10 tickets each. They're giving Legacy 6 members 10 tickets. Legacy 5 gets 8. Legacy 4 gets 6. Legacy 3 gets 6. And I think they got to like Legacy 3 and the lower bowl was sold out.
Yeah.
And so what's now? Give me your perspective, Tosh.
So the only thing I would add to that in context is that there's two other bullet points on the order. One is that the people that originally helped fund the Marriott Center back 40 years ago, when they were fundraising, they told those people that they would have lifetime seats, and that they even can go down one generation. And so for that person's whole life, and then that person's kid's life, they have the option to keep those seats. And then you also have the corporate sponsors also have 10. They gave them that they could choose 10 tickets. And so all of that combined with the AJ hype and how great we did last year, it was the craziest seat allocation ever. And me, just like everybody, I'm stoked. I was a Legacy 2 member of the Cougar Club, which meant that I had donated $25,000, and I've been a lower bowl guy for a long time. You know, usually around row 20. I think last year I was on row 16. But I knew this wave was coming, just like obviously thousands of people did. So I upped to a Legacy 3, which means that I had donated $50,000 or more, and then still continued to pay $4,000 a year, because I'm like, I need to upgrade to even keep the same level that I had. It was in my mind. But lo and behold, my time comes, and I think I was like on the 4th or 5th day. Like I was fairly quick in the order, and all of a sudden Legacy 3 shows up. I log on to my time, and the entire lower bowl is taken. Not a single seat in the whole lower bowl. And even in the upper bowl, if you want to be like, from a reference standpoint, between the 25-yard lines on the sides, those were basically all gone. They were just scattered or very much at the top. And so that was a little bit of a gut check for me, which I was not expecting. At the same time, I saw a lot of fans outraged. I was not outraged. There was an ingredient of disappointment, but there was also an ingredient of, this is what big time programs are like. Like, this means that BYU is making real money, because everyone that was ahead of me had to donate real money to the athletic program. And the demand is big, but then full disclosure, I also am benefiting from the other game of that. I have some connections to people that were early in the line, and this ticks people off too, but I'm going to be able to get some of those tickets from people that were early in the line. And so I am not going to be shut out. And that game does bug people, but I experienced both sides of this. I saw the disappointment, but I'm also taking advantage of one of the things that I think people want to try to shut down, which is how many tickets the big, huge sponsors and corporate sponsors are able to get before everybody.
Yeah, so there's two camps to this, and by the way, I'm sure you're going to see BYU announce that season tickets were sold out this week. I'm sure once we get to like gold, silver, bronze, I don't think we're even going to get to bronze, but I think by the time we get to silver, they're going to sell out. So there's kind of two camps to this, and you've pointed this out, but the camps are basically to solve this problem. Some fans say, well, BYU fans should just be spending more money, right? They should, if you like what you did, if you're Legacy 2 and you want to get decent tickets, increase your donorship and become Legacy 3 and you'll get better seats. The other camp to that is BYU fans should just put lower limits on their higher tier membership. So as I mentioned,
on number of seats. Yeah,
exactly. Yes. So for 80 circle, 10 seats feels like a lot. And, obviously Legacy 6 also gets 10, 8 gets 5, Legacy 6 gets, or Legacy 3 and 4 gets 6. So that's another camp to this. And I also wonder too, if BYU should be increasing ticket prices for kind of higher level donors. I actually don't know what higher level donors are paying. You pay for the seats, right? You pay for the actual seats in the arena. So I don't know what the season ticket cost is for that.
It's the same. They pay the same price for the ticket as anybody. And really, most of the seats in the whole lower bowl are $1,500 a piece. And if you get like first 3 rows, they move up to like $1,800 to $2,000. But that price point is not that crazy. It's actually a really good deal compared to Jazz games or anything. So the barrier to entry is the donation, not the ticket price.
Yeah.
And so you brought up very well. Those are the two options of they could just get people to spend more to move up more, or get people to, or we limit the number of tickets the big donors get. I think I lean more towards the program needs money and capitalism works. Like, I'm not for socialist solutions and that would get the program the funds that it needs. All that being said, I think the truth is a little bit somewhere between those. I lean a little towards capitalism, but I think that what my solution would be is we do trim a little bit off of, like, the corporate sponsors and the biggest donors only get 6. And then most of the legacy tiers get 4 in the lower bowl. They can still get the same numbers they want if they'll go upper bowl. But I think, or you just limit that, and then after every single Cougar Club member goes, it goes back to them to fill up their remaining. That's probably the move. So I actually think we're close to where it should be because it raised a ton of money to BYU athletics. And right now we're in the off season, but during the season we want wins. And these funds help with that. But I think we're close to the perfect equilibrium, but we probably got to move it a little bit over on limiting seat numbers.
And here's I actually agree. So here's my reasoning for why I think BYU should do something about it. And it's not necessarily, well, you should just pay more money. My reasoning, and stick with me here, I'm going to compare this to Pokemon, okay? Because I have 2 kids. They love Pokemon. It is nearly impossible to go to a GameStop or go to a Walmart or go to a Barnes & Noble or go to a Best Buy. Like, there's these retailers that are supposed to be carrying these cards. It's impossible to find these cards. Do you know why, Tosh?
Because when someone shows up early and buys all of them is my guess.
People will stalk, right? They stalk the stalkers, meaning they know they're able to figure out the schedule of when Walmart stocks their Pokemon cards, and they will wait and camp out for Walmart to stock their Pokemon cards, and they will buy them out, right? And it's not with the intent of collecting the cards, because if that was the intent, that's fine. That's what they're meant for. It's with the intent of they're going to go on Amazon, they're going to go on eBay, and they're going to resell them right away. They're not even going to open the boxes, right? And that's what makes collecting Pokemon cards a challenge. And people really like there's a kind of negative feeling towards those people. They're called scalpers, right? We know what scalpers are. So my only concern with allowing anybody, not just members of the Cougar Club, AD Circle Legacy 6, but anybody to buy 10 tickets is that like are those 10 tickets actually going to be used for the person that's buying them, or are they going to turn around and sell 6 of them every week, right? Every home game. And that's where I have a problem. If we can, and I don't know the solution for this. I don't think there really is one. But if BYU can find a way to solve the problem of how many of these tickets are actually going to those Cougar Club members versus how many of those are going to on a second market for twice the price.
I agree. And I think everyone agrees with that. It's tricky to find a solution because on the levels of things, there's going to be very few Cougar Club members that have a family of 10 that's going to every game.
But even friends, like I would even say friends in the neighborhood, right?
Correct. And so that's the one level removed. And I don't have a problem with that. But then I think people generally feel somewhat comfortable with that. Where they get uncomfortable is if they're just listing these to sell these. And again, because the ticket price is not super high, people with really good seats, I think, could turn a profit if they were selling every game.
Absolutely.
But the other problem, though, is fans get really mad when they see empty seats. And so BYU would rather, and most fans would rather those tickets get sold and used rather than they're going on vacation. So they get posted on SeatGeek because SeatGeek is who supports BYU's tickets. So like that's the easiest way to sell through BYU is SeatGeek. But it's hard to know, is this person a scalper or is this person somebody that's on a vacation and is trying to make sure their tickets get used? And I don't know. BYU says that we're monitoring, and if you look like you're selling too many of your tickets, we'll revoke your ability to buy. They say that, but I've never heard of that enforced because I think they would have a hard time telling the difference between those two. It would be possible. I guess if they sold if every single time that game was used, it was a sold ticket on SeatGeek. But it's a little bit harder to where to draw the line, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, it's hard to enforce, and I get it. Like I have no solutions for this. But that is the issue that I have. That's the only issue that I have is that when you allow for 10, and maybe the solution is you just allow fewer tickets. But if you allow for 10 tickets at that level, lower bowl, like row 5, 6, 7, people are going to max that out because they know that they can turn around and sell it and really make a profit. If they're selling for $1,600-$1,700 for season tickets, they can make that up in a handful of games. I feel like selling 5 of their tickets, right?
Totally. Well, here's 2 other points on this subject. One is, I smile and love this. BYU basketball is the hottest ticket in the state right now. And it's really become, I said on Cougar Board the other day, that lower bowl tickets are going to become like the new Rolex, where it's just like this status symbol because people are going to be like, they know you spent what to get these? And it's crazy what people had to spend and donate in order to get lower bowl tickets. My other thing I am real curious to watch is what's the resale value market going to be like? Because last year, again, there's a lot of home basketball games, and this may upset some fans, but I didn't go to every single one. Sometimes I have
How dare you?
Sometimes I have a conflict with, I have a kid's game at the same time, or I'm out of town for work or fun, and so I sometimes would give them away, but sometimes I would sell some of my tickets when I was gone on SeatGeek. Usually when I would sell them, I would only get like $30, $40 for row 16. seats. And so I was always surprised at actually how soft the SeatGeek market was. And I'm curious this year, is the demand going to be huge for those, or is the real, could someone just choose 10 games they want to go to? And it's probably not going to be $40, but even if it's $80, even if it's $100, they spend $1,000 to go to their top 10 games. I think that is probably actually one of the solutions if you're a fan that got cut out. Is I bet you the resale market is going to surprise people again, that it's not as crazy as people would guess, and that you could actually get a good bang for your buck by just buying seats to the games you want to go to.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, to your point, you kind of hinted at this is a good problem to have if you're BYU. It means your program is successful. It means fans want to go to games. It means you don't have to drop curtains, right, to make it look like your stadium is small enough to accommodate your lack of attendance. So this is a good problem to have, and I'm loving the fact that we're talking about it. Now, is it sad for fans who just donated to bronze level Cougar Club to hopefully get tickets? Sure, because you're probably not going to get tickets, but you have to realize that like this is what the Dukes and the Kentuckys and the Floridas and the good programs in the country have to deal with. Gonzaga, right, on an annual basis. And it just means that BYU is there, right? BYU is at that same level, and that's a good problem to have.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it should. I am, for my first time in BYU fandom history, I catch myself just looking forward to basketball this time of year.
Yeah.
Like, I'm stoked on football, but I have never looked past football at any percentage. And this year, I am looking past football at probably like a 20% level right now. So
yeah. By the way, that is a great segue, Tosh, because we are going to go back to football just for a second because, we talked about Utah last week, and we said Utah up until that point of the season was going to be the toughest game. I think we may get a little bit tougher. These 2 weeks of the season, Utah and Iowa State, are going to be what determines, I think, the success of BYU's season, and they could really fall off of a cliff from here. Or if they end up, beating Utah, beating Iowa State, then they're starting to talk about playoff contention, surely New Year's Six contention. They're likely in the driver's seat. They will be in the driver's seat to make a Big 12 championship game. So this is a huge 2-week series for BYU. So they play Iowa State after they play Utah. Iowa State last year, we obviously know they made it to the Big 12 championship game. It was the program's first ever double-digit win. They did barely beat Utah, and BYU fans will remember this. They barely beat Utah. We needed Utah to win one game, right? One game out of all the ones they lost. We needed to win one game, and they lost by like 3 points to Iowa State. And then Iowa State went on to beat Kansas State by like 9. To clinch the Big 12 championship game, that's how BYU ended up not making it. Obviously, BYU could have beaten Arizona State, and they would have controlled their own destiny. So this is not an Iowa State problem. This is a BYU problem. But if Iowa State would have lost to Utah last year, BYU would have been in. They then go on to beat Miami in a shootout in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, 42-21, a game that BYU fans would have liked to, I think, have attended. Instead, they played Colorado. Last year, Iowa State had one of the worst rush defenses in the country, but they had one of the best passes. In fact, they had the best pass defense in the country. But I think one causes the other, right? I think because they were such a bad rush defense, nobody passed against them. So it's more indicative of just the fact that teams prepared for them by running the ball a lot. So that was Iowa State last year. Tosh, are you concerned at all about this year compared to how they did last year? Are they going to be better than they were last year?
It's hard to say better because they are really good, but I think they're going to be just as good. They're returning their quarterback, who is the star of their offense. They're returning great running backs. Their tight ends they have 2 like NFL caliber tight ends. This is a really good team, and from me putting odds on wins, this is the lowest odds win game of the season, and that is in large part because how good Iowa State is. It's in very large part, too, because it's coming right after the Utah game when that is an emotional That's always just an emotional, hyped game, and there's always a lull coming out of it every single year. And so this Iowa State game is one that I am not chalking up a win right now. I am planning on this being a loss.
Yeah, and it's in Ames too, right? Like we've seen how now BYU basketball has been able to win against Iowa State in Ames, and so can the football team replicate that? It's tough. Like I think that any game you go on the road, there's a reason why Vegas typically will swing your point total by 3 home versus away games. And
it matters.
It totally matters. And so I think BYU on the road in Ames against an Iowa State team that made the Big 12 championship last year. I disagree that they will be better or the same as last year. I actually think they take a step back, but it's not a big step back. I think Rocco Becht is a big part of that. Iowa State does start their season in Dublin, Ireland against Kansas State. I think that's going to be the biggest factor of for us to be able to determine how good is this team. If they lose to Kansas State in Ireland, I think you're talking about maybe a 7 or 8 win team versus an 11 win team last year. Vegas, by the way, has them at 7.5 wins, which I feel like is kind of low. I think they win 8 or 9, but they have BYU at 6.5, so maybe they're just down on the Big 12. Iowa State last year did not have much of a run game. They did have, Rocco Becht. As you mentioned, they had Jalen Noel, Jaden Higgins last year. Both of those players are gone. By the way, they both went to Texas to play for the Houston Texans, both drafted by the Texans. They were both 1,000-yard receivers. Now, is that because they were phenomenal receivers or because Rocco Becht was throwing it to them? We'll have to see.
Time will tell.
Probably both, right? Probably a mixture of both. So they lose those guys. They bring in Chase Sowell coming in from East Carolina. He had 34 catches, 670 yards, 3 touchdowns in 2024. He did deal with some injuries over in East Carolina. Then they bring in Xavier Townsend, who's a transfer from UCF. He had 10 catches, 59 yards, and 1 touchdown. His season was cut short, obviously because he was but he was preserving his freshman season. So he only played his redshirt year. And so he only played 4 games. He was kind of their Parker Kingston in the sense that he was their jet sweep guy. Kind of like when BYU used Puka, right? He was their jet sweep guy, and he was pretty efficient at that. So can Iowa State use him to be that same, fit that same role? We'll have yet to see. And then, as you mentioned, some of the best tight ends in the country. So I think offensively, their passing game will take a minor step back, but Rocco Becht is going to make sure that they are still successful in the passing game.
Yeah, Rocco is very, very tough. He was top 25 in the country in most passing stats last year. He's a proven winner. I mean, beat Miami in the bowl game, a very good Miami team. And so, I pick them right now. If I was Vegas, I would have them as the favorite to win the Big 12. I also think that, on a different note, as good as a season they had last year, they lost a ton of money. And right now, that's the other recent news with Iowa State, that, again, we should be happy with the problems BYU has of too many fans wanting to pay too much money, because Iowa State right now is fighting for their financial lives. And that might be, and I hope it is, why they're playing a game in Dublin. Because what a stupid thing to play your rivalry game overseas in game 1. That's the stupidest thing. If I was a fan, if BYU played Utah on the other side of the world in game 1, I would be ticked. But hopefully for them, they're getting paid a crap ton of money, because there really is some scary financial stuff coming out of Iowa State lately.
Yeah. Yeah, it was already bad enough when BYU was playing Utah in non-conference play, like one of the first 3 weeks of the season. Like, that was miserable, and it felt like BYU was never ready for that game. Jake Heaps comes to mind, right? So yeah, I can't imagine being in the shoes of Iowa State or Kansas State fans. That would be miserable. That said, Tosh, I think we both are kind of chalking this up as a loss. Give me a point total. What's the score going to be?
This early, it's hard to say, but I'm going to go 24 Iowa State to 14 BYU.
Okay.
I think kicking against the Cougs, but
I know.
I've had them winning, I think, at this point, 6 games in a row. So just keep that in mind, Cougar fans. This puts them, in my predictions by game so far, this puts us at 6-1, but this one's a loss.
Yeah, and honestly, if this is the only game they lose, they're still in contention, right? This is not if you're going to lose one game, it's fine. You're fine losing to Iowa State and Ames. I agree with you. I think it'll be a little bit higher scoring. I think you're going to see a 28-21 or 28-24 type of game. But I do think Iowa State wins just because, Rocco Beck. Rocco Beck kind of reminds me of a John Beck. Ironically, their names are fairly similar, but just a low key experienced quarterback that can really carry a team. And so I think he carries them to a lot of wins. 8, 9, 10 wins, and BYU is going to be one of them, I think. All right, Tosh, thanks for hopping on. As always, it's a pleasure to have you on. Hopefully we can get you in studio next week. I think I'll be in studio as well. So anyway, thanks for hopping on.
Yeah, it's been great. Have a great one.
Okay, this is the Loyal Cougars podcast. I'm your host, Jake Edmonds, alongside Tosh Mackintosh. Head over to YouTube to like and subscribe, hit the bell to get notified. Also, head over to Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe there as well. Until then, we'll see you next week.